So you must have hit some challenges now with WSI and taking that experience, maybe you got a couple of challenges that you overcame because, it's not smooth sailing, this franchise, right? It's, you got to
No.
get your own lead you got to deliver it at the end of the day. It sounds good, but sometimes
Uh,
it's hard.
uh, yeah, I mean, to me, probably um, one of the things is when I come into it, I said, right, I'm not going to specialize. I'm going to do everything with everybody, right? And it was, we had this conversation with specializing and all the rest of it, but I was sort of coming from a role where I felt I was very pigeonholed, but I wanted to, at least see what else was out there. And I think that was okay. But I think the result of that is that you end up, every project is new. There's no repeatability. There's no system approach to it, if you like.
Yeah.
And equally, there are things that you're good at and there's things that you're not good at. So some projects were more successful, than others. So at certainly, I would say, year or two back, you're sort of at a point where you'd lots of small projects, small clients, really busy, but none of them really been very profitable. Which is a sort of frustrating place to be because you feel like you're working hard, you're working long hours, and yet, you're not necessarily seeing the returns for it. So, one of the things I said in terms of that space is being just a bit more focused around particularly e-commerce projects, which is obviously my background, an area where I have strong knowledge in, and building up not just projects, but also beginning to build some collateral, that's sort of my IP in the space, that you can use to engage new customers, etc.
Right.
So that's been very much a focus over the last probably 18 months, particularly coming off the back of the pandemic and some of the things that we saw there. So that's one change that I've made and one challenge I've had to address. We've had projects that have gone badly early in the days as well. I mean, I remember it's one of the first website developments. It was actually, and it was a development on HubSpot, so it was a HubSpot website, which just turned out to be a complete nightmare. So again, my approach to that is you have to own it in front of the client. There's no point in blaming HubSpot or anybody else. And say, right, we're going to fix this. It doesn't matter what it's going to take. We're going to sort it and fix it. But it was a painful and a learning experience. But it's a client we had for 3-4 years afterwards. They went away for a while, and then next thing, 9 months later, they're back with us, as a client as well. So having gone through that pain in the early days and having, had that focus on making sure that we're going to look after the client here, even though it felt very painful at the time, I think it was, when the client comes back to you like 3, 4, 5 years later and say, yeah, I still don't want to work with you, it tells you that you're doing something right.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've experienced that a few times as well, and without speaking to others, it's incredible. It also shows you the competitiveness of our industry, right? Where other people can smooth talk you into changing, and maybe not the delivery part, which gives us a bad reputation, that industry in some way.
Yeah.
So
delivery is the difficult part. It's all, it always is, and that's where you really earn your keep.
Exactly, and one of the things that my franchise is never good at, and I steered away from it, was large projects, especially e-commerce projects. We work with my wife Mariana and the team, and we specialize in WordPress. We'll do some e-commerce with it, but we want to be in and out in 8 weeks if we can. And when you go a big e-commerce project, that could be 9 months or more. And I think it must be your experience that gives you the confidence to do something like that.
Yeah, and I think the thing about I find with most of the e-commerce projects is there are always multiple work streams. It's not just one. Like just when you got payments sorted, there's going to be there's a challenge on product.
Yeah.
If you've got your traffic coming right, there's a problem on conversion. So it's all about being able to segment out the responsibilities and the work streams and having a really good communication flow with the clients. Because equally, they have a lot of responsibilities in terms of what they need to deliver, particularly in product data, all of those sort of inputs. And you really, really have to over-communicate the importance of that up front. Because typically it's data that kills you, if they don't deliver on those pieces. And their operational procedures very often are haphazard, to say the least. And yeah, I mean, we work, like I've probably worked well, we've worked with a lot of different platforms. I mean, obviously WordPress, WooCommerce, Shopify, and BigCommerce are probably the three big ones.
Right.
But, we've had PrestaShop, we've had all sorts of things, at times. And you have to sort of, I almost want to start every conversation as, let's move on to a platform we know more about. But it doesn't always work that way, I'm afraid, Francois.
Well, I'm glad I'm speaking to you today, because I think when we get some of these Shopify things, I'm going to come to you and get some consulting as to what to do, because it's you can't do it all. It's great.
And there's much knowing your way around the ecosystem. Those the different apps and add-ons that actually make this thing work. And then, as we always say in WSI, but measuring the results and making good business judgments based on those measurements, and then changing the plan, accordingly. Because, nothing ever, like, it can be a very seasonal thing through the course of the year. Competition comes and goes, even fashion products go in and out of fashion.
Right.
The thing that amazes me, actually, looking at a number of the clients, is how different the top selling products can be from one year to the next. And how the hell you plan for that, and how you find the new product that's going to fill the gap that this thing that was selling really well last year doesn't do. That's a really interesting challenge for some of the clients we work with.
Well, I think I'm just thinking, as you talk about e-commerce, not only is it difficult to put together a large project, but once you complete that, you need to get a lot of people in to visit that website with SEO and everything else to sell. And then that's more pressure, because it's not like this is a consultant who's looking for 5 jobs in a month. E-commerce, we want to sell everything every day. It's
this is it. And particularly when you're working with somebody and their average product price is €5 or €10, you need a hell of a lot of traffic. To convert to make that work. And the other thing you often hear from clients, I probably deal with more startups and small businesses. They're always great fun, but they're bloody tiring. But to build a 100% online brand is a real challenge. Somebody comes out with a new product, people don't know about it, they don't trust it, and all they're looking at is, I'm going to get 15% more margin if I sell this directly to the consumer rather than go through retail and distribution.
Right.
And the thing that they never account for is that 15% of margin, you have to invest at least that, if not more, into driving your demand generation.
Absolutely.
So it's not a free 15% of margin. The reason a retailer or distributor, takes that margin is because they have the demands, they have the audience they can get in front of. If you don't have that, you're going to have to spend, and it's expensive to buy traffic, as we know. So that's the one. I have that conversation very often with new brands that says, look, the world really is a omni-channel, multi-channel, world. If you're trying to bring a new product to market, unless you've got significant resources to go promote that online, you should be thinking about an omni-channel approach, because by all means, build your own direct audience and your own, online as part of that strategy, because that's going to be really valuable into the medium term. But to try and get your product in front of people and get them to try it, it's much easier to do than omni-channel environment.
Yeah, I know you're right. I've had that conversation too. I've said, rather join the people who are at the top of Google and pay them to give you the business and the leads, and trying to fight up there, so it's definitely a way. So with all your experience that you're bringing, to your business, which is amazing, that you can share, what are you thinking of doing in the next year or so? Like your goals, I mean, I think you're still young in the business, because you're in your second phase, or the franchise was still the first phase. What are you looking at going forward, for this next year and maybe a little bit beyond that?
I mean, certainly from my point of view, I think it's very much, focusing into those sort of e-commerce clients. So continuing to specialize a little bit more than I would have done in the early years. But not only that, rather than just picking up projects, also sort of be building out sort of a framework. Like we've now worked on multiple different projects, So we're sort of building some collateral, and we actually ran a podcast series late last year, early this year, which was really connecting with various e-commerce owners, on LinkedIn, and having them in and talk about their experiences.
Okay.
So we're looking on building on that platform sort of next year we sort of have developed something of an e-commerce maturity model and sort of framework thing. So it's about seeing, can we use that to help e-commerce owners figure out where they are, what they should be prioritizing next, and how they stack up against, their competition. Yeah. So the reason we're doing that is to give us something to talk about and to engage with those brands, more than, just running paid search or SEO, all the things that are important as tactics. Yeah. But maybe being able to have a more strategic conversation with those clients that says, look, if you're running an e-commerce business, there's 8 different areas that you need to have all spinning very well. And you might think your main problem is here, but when we look across the business, we can actually see other problems that should be prioritized and fixed first. So it's about seeing if I can build that type of a conversation. Yeah. And in doing that, attracting slightly bigger clients maybe than some of the other sort of e-commerce owners that we've been working with over the past while.
Well, I think,
and then see where that takes us. Then
absolutely. I'm thinking, you're up to something, I would think, because with your skills in e-commerce and and your experience in it now, with the whole pandemic worldwide, e-commerce has just taken off, right? I mean,
yes,
there's not even enough cardboard boxes to package it for couriers.
But I think there's 2 things happening, and I think the pandemic has had 2 effects really. One is absolutely suddenly everybody that thought that their business would never go online, suddenly they were online. Yeah. They had to be online to survive. So it took that conversation, whether do I need to go online or not, out of the equation. Yeah. Everybody realized yes, they had to. And that was one thing, which is great for our business, right? Yeah. In terms of having those conversations. The second thing is we obviously went from, e-commerce being maybe 22, 23, 24% of the retail space to being 50, 60, 70% of the space when there was no other game in town, right?
Right.
And a lot of people thought, this is great. Sure, people just come to the website and they buy. But of course, once the retail environment opened up again, what happens? The online business came back. Now we've still accelerated, 3-4 years ahead of where we would have been without the pandemic. But now everybody's looking at, geez, I did great in 2020 and 2021, but now my 2022 numbers don't look so good.
That's right.
Why is that? Yeah. So it's more difficult now to be successful. More people are online. There's more competition for those online eyeballs. So
absolutely.
Suddenly you have people who had a very good online year for 18 months are now struggling to repeat those numbers.
Yeah.
And they're beginning to ask the questions, why is that? How do I develop it? So I think there's those two dynamics going on, Francois, in this space. One is everybody understands they have to be there for at least part of their business. Yeah. But hey, now that the world has returned to some semblance of normality, although when I think of what's going on in Ukraine and everybody else, I wonder what normal is anymore. Yeah. But it is a more difficult environment. Particularly with, consumers are being a bit more cautious, just given the overall environment. So I think we're going to have a challenging couple of years, even in the online space. Yeah. But if you're not there, you're probably going to even have more challenges, I think, than if you're actually getting 20-25% of your total revenue from online in the retail space. I think you have to be doing that at least. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just giving up that field to your competition, and that's not a good thing.
Well, there's less resistance now, which is okay, because before it was, you had to convince people this is the way to go, and they realize, well, if you didn't do that, you're out of business. You got to try it out, So, and everybody, everyone buys online. I mean, I went shopping early on, and I'm probably the only guy on my own shopping where everyone else has got somebody shopping for them, type of thing. What am I doing?
But even groceries, like Tesco and deliver at home. I don't think I'd stand in a supermarket.
No, exactly. I was in a supermarket now, and I'm banging into other people who are just on their motorbikes packing for people, and I'm thinking, I might as well do that. I might as well go online and buy and get some time, and then it's just the whole industry has been amazing.
For sure. But the thing about it is it's a 24/7 business though, so it's challenging.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be committed to invest in the platform that you're using. And when you open a shop, you're going to have rent, you're going to have heat, you're going to have light.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing applies to your online store. You're going to have platform costs, you're going to have development costs. You're going to have to pay for traffic. That's what your rent is in the real world.
That's right.
So you have to build a P&L for that business that allows for those costs and allows you to invest appropriately as you drive the business forward. If you're only doing a couple of K a month, then it's very hard to find. And the trick is just getting that acceleration that you have, that the business is generating the funds to reinvest back in it. Because without that, it's not going to go anywhere.
Oh, I really like what you've been sharing with us. We're nearing the end of our interview. I mean, this is going so well, I could talk to you all day. Have you got a motto that you'd share with anybody that you find?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few that we depend on. Although I think that my favorite one is probably, I think it was a tribute to Robert Kennedy, but I don't think he actually invented it or created it first. I think which is very much, it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, look, I'm never surprised when things break.
There we go.
In fact, I'm more surprised when things work, to be honest, over the years. And it's about how you approach those breakages. And if there's a problem, you just have to roll up your sleeves, get under the bonnet, get under the covers, figure out what's wrong, go fix it, move on. There's no point blaming Google or blaming Facebook or competition. If you have a problem, you got to understand what's causing it.
Yeah.
Figure out a way of fixing it or going around it or whatever, and just getting on with it. So I've always been
I like that one. We have fires just about every day to put out.
Every morning you wake up, something else is. I used to say, even my IBM and Lenovo days, it's my role here is to come to fix problems.
Yeah.
If you're not waking up in the morning saying, okay, what am I going to fix today? Then you probably got the wrong attitude. I'm
gonna sell you something today, and tomorrow I'm gonna help you fix it.
This is it. Something's going to change somewhere that somebody hasn't thought through entirely, and therefore something's going to break.
Right.
And particularly when you're, in the real world, you can paper over those cracks.
Yeah.
In the online world or in the e-com world, it's a lot more difficult to paper over those cracks. They become exposed, much more quickly.
Right.
So you have to find the leaks and plug them.
It's true. Now, if a new WSIRC connected with you today, what advice would you give them? Knowing what you know, someone's going to jump into this thing. They've listened to this video, maybe, and some others, but what would you say based on your experience?
Well, certainly, if you're thinking of working in this space and having your own consultancy or agency or wherever in the space, absolutely, I would consider being part of this. You're going to get help, support. It's going to improve your chances of being successful. By an order of magnitude. Because starting your own business, running your own business, is a lonely and a difficult place. It's not for the faint-hearted, for sure. The second thing is probably, and I know we've talked about it on the network a lot, but find an area that you're really good at. You cannot be good at everything. Nobody would believe you're good at everything, even if you think you are. And become that expert, like whether that's in a vertical or in a particular area or a platform or set of tactics or whatever, because that gives you a differentiation then. Because there are so many, tons of web developers. There's loads of paid search. There's there's so much competition out there, and you have to find your own way of describing that, talking about that. Being able to engage a business owner. With that story and being able to connect with them on a business level, so that you can actually develop long-term relationships. Because in my mind, long-term relations are the ones that are profitable, because you're not going through that constant startup churn with a client, where you're investing in the client to try and get yourself up and running with them. So I would say, finding whatever that area is, it doesn't really matter. But find a specialization that you can be really good at, and compete with, and then use that as your calling card with the type of businesses that you want to connect.
Good advice. So if we're going to meet at the conference one day soon, but if we went to happy hour today, what are you going to be ordering, John?
If you make it over to Dublin, I think it's probably been a while, Francois.
Yes, I haven't been there for a long time.
We'd certainly go. It might be a pint of Guinness normally, but when you travel abroad, it doesn't travel that well.
Yeah.
So years ago, I discovered, I can drink gin and tonic for a good period of time overnight. I'm still going to be perpendicular afterwards. So,
good.
So it's probably gin and tonic would be my go-to at happy hour.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I'd normally stick to red wine now. I mean, I used to be a big Jack Daniel's fan and all the rest of it, but it's standard right throughout the world. If I'm going somewhere, I'll do that. But when I'm in Mexico, you got to have a tequila. And they told me about a Banderita the other day. I says, well, I haven't had one of those, so find out what that is.
Yeah. When in Rome, as they say.
Yeah, when in Rome.
You got to follow the locals. It's generally not a bad. It's not a bad advice in that space.
So, John, I really appreciate you spending all this time with us. We've been on for 40 minutes or so. One last question. If you were not going to talk to me today, where would you rather have been?
well, on a normal day, now when I look out the window today, it's still in rain and sort of wet and wintry today. And we've had a glorious autumn here up at the land. So if it was a nice day, Francois, I'd say it'd be standing on the 10th tee at Sea Point Golf Club, which is just about a mile from my house.
Okay.
And you can see out over the Irish Sea up along the coastline.
Yeah.
Either that or actually back on the veranda enjoying a pint of Guinness, looking down the 18th fairway and looking at it. It's a really gorgeous. I'm a member of the golf club, so it's certainly my favorite golf course. And just a really nice place to unwind and have a beer and some good conversation with friends.
When I saw that,
it's always great. No matter how good or how bad the golf is, as long as you have a good conversation, you'll be okay.
Beautiful. Yeah, I went on to Google and I Googled 10th tee at Sea Point, just to see, because I'm also I used to play a lot of golf. I'm trying to get back into it again one day.
Yeah.
And there are some beautiful places when you play golf that those holes come to you that are just amazing. And I looked at it. It's a links course, right? So
correct. I love those seaside courses.
Yeah, beautiful.
There's it can be very unforgiving when the wind blows, but that's part of the challenge. I mean, you just have to go play the elements, play the course, and go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's the key thing. The score, it's only incidental.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's been so interesting talking to you, and I'm looking forward, to meeting you in a couple of months. Well, I think it's May next year when the conference.
Not too long to go.
And thanks so much. I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Great, Francois. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Okay. Great then. Thanks. Bye. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.